mind just how far this is above the skies of New York City. CNN's John Miller joining us right now. John, I know you're in touch with all of your sources across the city, your law enforcement sources. As Boris mentioned, there are 2 members of the emergency service unit now making their way up that tower. Have you learned any more about who they are or how they managed to get there as we look at these live pictures?
Well, this call came into 911 at 12 noon and 48 seconds, so almost a minute after 12 noon. So this has been going on for an hour. Units from the Midtown South Precinct responded and started climbing their way up towards the observation deck and beyond. When they got to the 104th floor, they reported that the locks there had been broken, so that it appears that may be part of this incident. But then you saw these 2 people literally at the tippy top, the very top, apparently from what we can see, without harnesses or protective equipment, basically freestyling with the when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace banner, and then that proposal. Who they are, what their message is beyond what's the banner, what's on the banner, whether this was to surround a marriage proposal. The message of love is impressive, but the message that they're going to get in a few minutes, because the officers from the emergency service unit are making their way up the tower to meet these 2 on the way down, they're going to probably face charges of reckless endangerment for the hazard they caused, criminal trespass for being in the area and not for the purposes that area is designated, burglary if in fact those locks were broken by them. So whatever the message is, it's going to be a mixed message by this afternoon.
No doubt. And WABC is now reporting that the 2 are in custody. We're working to get more information on their status, but that is what WABC is reporting, that these 2 who pulled off this stunt are now in custody. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is with us as well. Andrew, obviously an unusual situation. I use the word stunt because they were obviously prepared with the unfurling of that flag, what appeared to be a selfie stick that was hooked up while they were doing this proposal. Yeah, you see it on the right there hanging off the platform. I mean, this is an odd situation for law enforcement to be approaching, no doubt probably a frustrating one.
Absolutely, Boris. I mean, you know, an enormous amount of time and effort is spent trying to protect these spaces, trying to keep people out of them who don't belong there, trying to protect the general public from others who might stray into these spaces, certainly at these heights, and put everybody at risk. And the other thing here is both the city, and in terms of the police department, and of course the building owners really they were in a tough spot here. They have to respond to this very directly. They are going to have to do whatever they can to see that these people are prosecuted for any appropriate charges, because they cannot take the chance that others will see this and decide to also try it. These kind of daredevils who film themselves at really very dangerous heights, oftentimes straying or trespassing into places where they're not supposed to be doing this sort of stuff. You know, there's a whole groundswell of that. There's a whole community around that, of course, on the internet and social media and stuff. So the last thing that people who are responsible for the Empire State Building want is to turn this place into a target for that sort of activity, because ultimately it will end in some sort of tragedy. The danger here, the recklessness is obvious and can't be overstated.
Dang. It absolutely is. And taking that into account, too, John, I want to bring you back at this point in terms of for New York City, and you talked about who's responding here, but the concerns that there would be when you have 2 people here seemingly without any safety equipment climbing this high up. I mean, the Empire State Building alone is, I believe, 102 stories. On a hot, humid day in New York City, that metal is going to be slippery. The concerns about there being a fall or even something that they have on their person falling, the damage that could do to the surrounding area. What are those preparations like on the ground, John?
Well, this was a massive police response because initially they didn't know what were they walking into. but this appears to be, a messaging-based event. But as you can see, as they're up there without, harnesses, in the later footage, when you see the emergency service unit police officers climbing up to meet them, they have the harness belt on. They've got the clips where they clip in and clip off as they climb up. I have trained with them. I've climbed to the top of multiple New York City bridges with them. It's all a safety first operation. That is not what you were seeing here. This is Daredevil. So what does this all mean in the context of history? The image we think when it's climbing to the top of the antenna of the Empire State Building, of course, is the iconic King Kong. But what we have seen is, from Philippe Petit, the French acrobat who strung a line between the twin towers of the World Trade Center in 1974 and then crossed it in a high wire act that captivated the city, to urban explorers who simply do this kind of thing for thrills, whether it was the individual who tried to climb Trump Tower using rubber suction cups, or the individuals who climbed to the tower of the new World Trade Center post 9/11 and jumped off with parachutes. They were also tracked down.
That's important too. But sometimes, the best laid plans.
Yeah, and let's not forget that if you're sending officers in a group to this location, they're being taken away from other places that need to have policing. So talk about that and a little bit about the issue that causes.
It does. It's a diversion of resources. So that puts other people in jeopardy too. The officers could have been there to help someone off the street. Very hot day. People will succumb to heat.
Right.
So many scenarios you can imagine.
Right.
By taking all these people, building that perimeter, you saw how they emptied the sidewalk in case they did plummet.
Yeah.
So those things go into the factor with the Manhattan DA, what to charge, how much do they put the public in danger by doing that? And I would say substantial.
Robert, thank you. Just stay with us. We're almost, we're continuing the coverage, but I want to go to Lauren Glassberg. She's also joining us on our extended coverage. Lauren, where are you?
Hi, David. We are on 34th Street, a little closer to 6th Avenue, so about an avenue away from where Kimberly and Darla have been reporting from, and I'm outside one of the areas that people wait to get into, go up to the observatory, and we spoke to a bunch of people. They didn't know what had happened because from this perspective, you really can't see all the way to the top. And they were somewhat surprised and maybe I would say even delighted by the idea that two people have gotten engaged at the top of the spire. But of course, there are so many dangerous elements to what happened and obviously some criminal elements as well. But I can tell you when I was driving with my colleague Brian White, we were coming from the Upper West Side and we went east on 34th Street, and from all the way by 10th Avenue, you could see a little speck. We couldn't really make out what it was at the top of the spire, and as we got a little closer, we could sort of see the banner, but we were at a real distance, and it just looked like a speck. It wasn't until we actually saw what you were broadcasting that we could see the people and that really incredible sight of those two people up on that spire. But from down here, it's impossible to see the top because of all the setbacks at the Empire State Building and just the sheer height of the building. But this stretch of 34th Street is closed to traffic. We were able to get our news truck past the guardrails, but the barricades, but really the only people who are making their way here are pedestrians, and I would say most of the people really unaware of what has taken place thousands of feet above them. And that is the latest from my perspective on 34th Street. David, Sandra?
Lauren, just want to follow up real quick. Are any of the people next to you online to get into the Empire State Building?
I wouldn't call it a line. Yes, there are a few people waiting, but there's timed access for when you are allowed in. And a few people I spoke to said that they are slotted to go in at 1:15. And it's not clear whether that will even happen. But the guards here who let people in for the observatory are not sending people away. You can see these two women, they're on their radios. They're not sending people away. So it's not clear if it's going to reopen once everything's been secured, but I would imagine there's going to be some reevaluation of security measures since this took place this afternoon.
Imagine.
Yep, there's going to be a lot of questions
Yeah.
being asked and a lot of rearranging of schedules for sure. Lauren Glassberg, you said you're along
Yes.
34th
Yes.
and you're 6th?
Yes.